was hoping that we would get our wonderful Swangao player coming to join us. I'm not sure if she can make it. She's in AYE as well, so she might join us halfway through. We talked about it. If she can't, she can't. You know, she was supposed to have finished by now, I think, and be able to get over. But is there anyone we could send? Do you think? Or yeah, if it's possible, that would be wonderful. And I think we should give you a round of applause because you're so great with all the organising. Well done. Okay, so this is just like a little intro for you. While I'm kind of settling down and we're settling down and it's like just after 10, so we can start. Okay, so this is just anecdotally a piece I wrote after traveling around the world pretty much and went back to my home. That's my website. And just kind of felt different, having left home and travelled, and I always wanted to do that. So, number one, encounters with instruments. When I was young, I knew really powerfully. So I always put stuff on there in the idea that you can read it and listen and maybe twice. You know, this American research said you have to hear it 7 times to remember it. So this is twice, which is better than once. So read it or don't read it, it's up to you. But I grew up in an industrial area, factory town, steel town. It was really awful. You know, I walked to school past green pools of chemical sludge and, you know, all around me everyone's relationships were broken and fractured. And I knew where I was is not where I wanted to be. And sometimes as a young person living in this ugliness, something would hit me incredibly powerfully. And I didn't know why or what that thing was, but it was really powerful. And often it was sound. So I've said the vehicle of my transportation was music at that time. So, you know, an example, a little bit like Otto's point, when I was a kid listening to the radio, you know, my mum bought me a little cassette recorder. And it was before Christmas, this song came on. And I was so desperate to get this song. I was like, can I have it now? And she was like, no, it's your Christmas present. Don't be ridiculous. You know, it's gone to Santa Claus. How could you have it? And I just, there's something in this melody in this song. I was like, I need to have that song in my life because in this moment, everything is better. In the moment of this song, everything is better than it is most of the rest of the time, you know. So there's something there. Naturally, I wanted to try to find more of that, to get more of that feeling of better in my life. Search for the source, if you like, or to see if there is a source, or to optimize the chances of finding it. So I began to travel, both through studying, reading, you know, music, film, everything that I could get hold of, and also hitchhiking, you know, with the thumb. Because it was a poor area and I had no money, and they built a new highway not far from the industrial factory town. So I used to stand and get the lorry drivers, and I had like half a machete under here in case it was some murderer who picked me up, you know. The way things used to happen then. And what I was hoping, did you hear of Jack Kerouac, American writer? He wrote a book on the road, quite famous, about this kind of runaway characteristic, and he said that he hoped somewhere along the road the pearl would be handed to me. So he was hoping to find enlightenment or joy or something. I didn't know what that was or if it even existed, but I sensed that it was beyond the horizon. Somewhere out there on the road in the wildness might be something good. So this idea of travelling, I think, is what T.S. Eliot, the poet, says. The end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And that's what that first piece is really about. Coming home to a forest on the Welsh borders in the UK, having been to and stood outside a wedding in Nara and listened to the gagaku music, and listening to shang, the pipes also in that area on that journey, and playing actually a melodica and a saxophone in my own way to make something that felt to me similar to what I'd been hearing. So this search for sound naturally led me to sound sources, which is instruments. And I've bought and traded instruments in places all around the world, or the bits of the world that I've been to. So I bought one of these maps where I've got a sewing version, and you sew the country to say you've been there. Did you see them? They had the scratch and sniff ones, but I bought the sewing one because I'm naturally more crafty. And I thought, okay, let's be accurate. I'm not going to do the country. I'll be where I've been in that country. And I thought, I actually can't make the line thin enough, because all my travel ever is the width of 2 feet. So I haven't been to Thailand, have I? I've made some small lines around Thailand where my feet have walked. So this idea of colouring a whole country is insane. Anyway, so I didn't get the instruments for the sake of ownership or acquisition. I don't think I'm quite a museum yet. I'm almost ready to be put in a museum, but maybe not quite yet. So the point of getting instruments was the sound. Because for me, there was something in sound, some indescribable quality that's so emoting, so emotional, so uplifting, so profound. Actually, I can't find the right words because I don't think they exist for it. I thought that I would sell anything I had. I actually did on many occasions do this when I was traveling, to get the money to buy that instrument or to acquire that instrument, because I needed to be able to make and hear those sounds. There's something about it, really random things at random times in random places. So I'm going to play you a little bit of a composition that uses these found sounds. I met an old guy under a railway arch in Singapore, and he sold junk and old instruments. In Singapore they didn't have an antiques culture, so he sold lots of old stuff, and there were bell lyres and marching band stuff, and he had many LeBlanc clarinets because they didn't have antiques, so these were just used. They weren't valued as great instruments, which they are. So I bought 3 LeBlancs, an alto and 2 basses, and had them renovated when I got home. And it was £100. Similarly, I bought a suling that I found in Ubud, and a ditse, excuse my terrible pronunciations of these things, a Chinese membrane flute from a little shop in Beijing, Hutong. Experimented with them, started to make a piece. At the time I was fascinated with the Tian Shan, the heavenly mountains that I'd flown over, and saw no lights. So I imagined a golden oriole, a bird, wheeling in the air, circling among other winged creatures, cranes, lammergeiers. But in my imagination, as the birds circled, they were joined by more mythical creatures, Apsaras, Kinara, Garuda, this kind of thing, circling ever higher and higher, ever further and further away from the ground. And the piece is a wind septet, live electronics, 3 bass clarinet parts, soprano sax, and the others I mentioned. I play all of these instruments, and I couldn't play this now because I kind of episodically go through different phases. So have a little listen. I won't play too much of it. so the piece, as I say, circles ever higher, ever further away from the kind of sense of being grounded. And it's very interesting for me because I think it explores extended techniques somewhat as it develops. And I do think this is a little bit to do with losing air when you're playing wind instruments. You become oxygen depleted, and it's a very interesting headspace to be in. It's quite like, whoa. So yeah, it leads to some sounds, as you can hear. So sorry, I know it's a horrible thing to do to people, to just play little clips, because I know it all, and you know it's difficult, but I hope that gives you a feel of the thing. So one of the things with buying all these instruments that struck me and surprised me and actually disappointed me is how similar the things that I found exploring were. They all seem to be quite similar to each other. I really wanted them to be always stranger and more wonderful than the last instruments that I found. And I actually started to see there are lots of coincidences or overlaps in terms of what people have made, the kind of instruments that they made in all the far-flung outcroppings of human culture. So let me give you some examples of this kind of similarity. So it's kind of a quiz. See if you can think what this is. Like genuinely, you can shout out. It's a field recording, hence the windy noises and car horns. No guess? Sorry? Let's turn it off, sorry? Halluci, right, I don't even know what that is. It's kind of like a reeded, kind of double piped instrument. Ah, okay, I know the one. Chords, Chinese. Yes, yes. It sounds like someone either blowing one of those. Okay, thank you for that. Any more guesses? Anyone? Sorry? Trumpet. Okay, trumpets, that's a natural guess, isn't it? It's a natural guess. So I play this with MA students all the time. What's it for? Can you guess what that music was for? Its purpose? As if we're like crossing the road or something. Crossing the road? Yeah, no, it's genius. It makes some really strange noises. Yeah, yeah, okay. Any more guesses?
It's a vuvuzela.
It's a what?
A vuvuzela.
Yeah, okay, thank you again. Thank you for that contribution.
The one they used in...
Yeah, I know the ones, yeah. Okay, so no, so the only guesses there is for crossing the road. Nobody else have a feeling?
Herding animals.
Herding animals? Great.
Meditation.
Okay, meditation. So it's conch trumpets. They're just seashells that people have punched the... And this is, these are, as you can see, fishermen, hence the fish. It's not just there for a random purpose. These are the guys. They sit on the wharf in Chennai. I was in Chennai, and they play the trumpet to appease the sea gods so that they don't sink. So it's a really serious piece of daily practice for the fishermen. They're trying to cool the gods and make sure that they don't sink. And these seashells, they just find them and then punch a hole and blow into these conch trumpets, you know. Okay, so let's have another sound. The same guess. Yeah, the same kind of guesses, right? Vuvuzela from Vern at the back. Of course, this is the shofar, which is the Hebrew, the Jewish ritual trumpet for, again, calling on God very often, attracting the attention of God, but it's also a war instrument, it's a temple instrument, and you can see made from a very long horn. Okay. Completely different culture. Both very ancient uses of technology to make a sound. You're getting the hang of this now, right? So let me ask you, when? Can you give me a period for this one? I'm only doing this to make the point that actually we don't know, do we? Because the sounds are so similar. These are totally disconnected cultures. There's no historical evidence of these cultures interacting, because all these instruments in these contexts are very ancient. So actually people are just looking for the same sound. So this one is my own home culture, Celtic culture. I've gone the wrong way, sorry. It's this Irish trumpet, Celtic trumpet, which were restored and tried out. So we could have the Maya also playing the same instrument, which is really interesting, I think. Or we can have, give me a guess on that one. Anyone know this, the one on the screen? It's not really possible to say, is it? It's Italian, kind of Renaissance Italian, and then taken to England and mounted in England with the silver foot. And you know, we can, Vin bought this for me yesterday from Rambutry Road. You know, it's a washer hose, and if we, it's a bit too long for here, but a similar kind of thing. And the point I'm making is that the sound pre-exists us. I'm not really doing much to make this other than swirling some washing machine hose that I maybe should have made shorter. You know, the sound exists already, doesn't it? And you know, or we can have this one, which is yidaki, not didgeridoo, right? I'm looking to you at the back. It's a curly one. It's a travel one. Or if I do the proper breathing. So this is from your continent with extreme ancientness to it. Anyone want to guess? It's not possible to guess, is it? Literally could be anywhere. So it's Africa, side-blown trumpet type device. And these are the names for this instrument, because it definitely isn't a didgeridoo, except by a 1900-something newspaper. So yidaki is the one that seems to be kicking in as the name for it. So my point is, you can believe me or not, because we're just having fun today, that these instruments and sounds are similar across space and time. Ancient cultures and modern. Now, we were hoping to have Wawa with us, but I'm guessing, did you just get a message?
Yes, she has to receive some kind of diploma.
Okay, so that's far more important than helping me, so I'm really happy about that.
Time does matter more than music.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. And she's also a little bit petrified because I sent her the score to a Celtic piece to do some improvising on, and you know, that's fairly heavy duty for somebody to do to you, isn't it? So I'll just talk about her instrument. Sadly, she's not here to play it for us, but this is her swangao from Myanmar. And you can see, I love this picture, there are little baby ones at the bottom. They get smaller and smaller. So it's a harp, obviously, silk strings, beautiful. And she got one for me. I took it home last year and used it on some recordings, and maybe if she doesn't need so many flowers, she might be playing with us this evening. So I played it on a recent album, and Vin, who is over there, very kindly took that up live, because I can't play everything live, obviously. So and had a go with that, didn't you? And He plays everything backwards, being a guitarist. So he always holds the harps the wrong way around. But I kind of like that, you know. So anyway, so this instrument from Myanmar, so interesting. This is another one from a hotel in Yangon. I would quite like to get that one too, but I'm happy with that one. But that is amazing. Isn't that amazing? You know, this is such a thing. This one, I'll give up with the getting you to guess now. This is Egyptian, extremely ancient. It's basically the same instrument. It's a wooden frame with a skin top, strings in the same way. It's from something 1,300, 400. So that's like 3,500 years old. How on earth did that get to Myanmar? Maybe somebody went on a really long walk from Egypt. They got fed up of Egypt. They didn't like the hairstyles, and you know they went to Myanmar. But somehow it got there. So, but then we have this one from Gabon. It's just, you know, instruments are arriving everywhere. Similar instruments. Equatorial Guinea, looking very, very similar again. This is also African. I really like this guy. He's really bad posture, but you know, you can't have everything. Yet again, another African one. And yeah, go on, one more guess then, and then I'll let you off doing audience participation. Anyone want to take a guess? It's impossible, isn't it? It's a crazy question. Go on, you look like you're ready to go for it.
I'm gonna say no. I have no idea.
You have no idea. Anyone? Anyone? Gerard Edge, come on, have a go.
Viking?
Hawaii. Hawaii is a brilliant.
Hawaiian or Viking?
Yeah. So the point I'm making to you now, as human beings, we're not even only slightly musical here, are we? We're really musical. You know, we really know about this stuff. And we absolutely have no idea where this instrument comes from. Now, doesn't that make the point I'm making about this kind of notion of universality in music making? We can't even guess where this is from. When? Anyone have a guess on when?
It's a bit of a Duchamp thing going on.
Duchamp. So you think early 20th century? You're not totally wrong. You're mostly wrong, but not totally wrong. In that this is made from evidence, archaeological evidence. So this is a reproduction from archaeological evidence that's not that old. So you're actually pretty sophisticated with that guess. So this is actually Sumerian. This is like ancient. This is a drawing. You can see they have the Mithraic bull head. You know, the bull worshipping religion, from which we get the Christmas tree. The spruce tree is from that religion. Very, very similar. And here's a lady in the bottom right-hand corner playing it from a seal from that culture. Here's another picture, and look, 2000 BC. So we're talking 4,000 years old, and still in modern Myanmar. And in this room, over the way there, somebody is playing an instrument that somehow, through those 4 millennia, it exists in a very similar form as a contemporary instrument. So I asked her to look at a piece. Sadly, she's not here, but I have contingency, you see. I was prepared. This is I live in Wales. This is from one of our old books, the Mabinogion, and it's the Ada Rhiannon, which is the birds of Rhiannon. And this is a story. These birds can wake the dead, lull the living to sleep. It's magical stuff. So I made a piece along those lines using a Welsh compositional approach called Cerdd-dant. And this is a statement. It's very like jazz, actually. It's a statement of a theme and then improvisations. And it uses, I won't go into details, but it uses a compositional system from the Middle Ages, from a manuscript that's called Robert ap Hugh. And this has note fields, and you select alternatively from different note fields. And the note fields represent the temporal things, the kind of things of the everyday on one side, and the other notes represent eternal, infinite things. So I was going to get her, and that's a picture, to play it, but you just have to listen to this instead. And this is, of course, on a Welsh harp. Treated. Yeah, paper, you know. It was an old thing to put paper in the strings. It's a very ancient tradition. But since she isn't here, I'm just going to put her name on the screen. Let's celebrate Wawa San for her beautiful playing despite her absence. Hopefully she'll watch this video and hi Wawa. Yeah, so I've often thought there are exceptions to this notion of similarity in instruments. Check this out. I mean, I saw this and I was like, oh my goodness, isn't that astonishing? Do you like it? It's a tubular zither with a resonator made from a palm leaf. So you play this is basically like a guitar. It's a sort of version of a guitar. And I thought, come on, that's going to be pretty just one culture, right? That because it's palm leaves and it's a bamboo shaft, and I'm thinking this is going to be located. But so here's where it's from, Indonesia, and then of course you find this one in Africa, sort of the same. Oh, and hang on a minute, here's a kid's toy one. You know, it wasn't. There's one that looks like an umbrella, which I thought was quite cool. They're everywhere. And lastly, because this is one of my favourite instruments of all instruments ever, and I had to fill it with water a little while ago. I love it. A bird whistle. So the water makes it do that, isn't it? You all look like... Don't you think that's amazing? The water goes everywhere, but I love it. Yeah, so here we are. Lots of them. And of course, everybody, all the cultures of humanity have bird whistles, because birds are cute. And their whistles, this is pre-Columbian in South America. You know, it doesn't matter where you look. You get the same stuff. Chinese, this is European. So yeah, we use different technologies to create sounds, but the sounds are often strikingly similar. Pan flute, whole flute, bull roarer, Bronze Age horn, didgeridoo, on the one, oh sorry, I've said it, god damn me. Yidaki, sorry. Erhu, cello, Kruth, which is the Welsh version, Guzel, which is Hungarian, Morincourt is Mongolian. We just saw your one. How cello-like was that? Really beautiful, wasn't it, that instrument? You know, I'm kind of like thinking, how am I going to get that? You know, it's... Yeah. I love that idea. So why is it? Why is it? You know, we can see these things and say, oh, that's fun. Let's leave it alone and do something else. But I really like to investigate these things and think about why it should be. What is there something we can learn? For years I thought it was because we have limited access to materials. So the access to material decided that we build these instruments. And it was the limits of our imagination. You know, we are not as godlike as we'd like to think. We're limited creatures, and I thought perhaps we can only imagine that far, and we can't get beyond, you know. And that does play a significant part. But what if the core motivation was something else, something more profound? And this also might explain why I've spent my life seeking for sound, and that I'm not just insane. You've probably got an opinion on that after this half a presentation. I'm going to leave that with you and see what I can do to try and turn it around. So I want to use bits from string theory, from physics, the possible futures of the universe, Stephen Hawking, Schopenhauer, German philosopher, and a little bit of the very controversial musicologist Victor Zuckerkandl, from whom I really like two lines, and see if we can approach an answer. And the way that music draws on the essence of things to challenge, lift and inspire. So number 2, section 2, part 2, part 2, music, science and magic, which I think are arguably all the same thing. So I think hopefully you'll agree with me. In music we experience something different to the everyday. And it's something that's significant. Certainly for all of us, it's significant. Composition, great performance are shrouded in mystery. We think of a great performer and we're just like, oh, wow, that was, that performance that day, and we talk about it and we have recordings, and we're like, Or composition, we was fascinated by the details of how somebody made this piece because it's so amazing, Maybe that's affectation. Maybe it's a pose that we put on in order to make it all seem more important and more special. But I think some of it is inescapably real. So these seem to exist within, emerge from, and even seek some kind of alternative state to our everyday state. That's my argument. Now, I don't think all music does that all the time. It has many functions, and this is a diagram I invented for myself to try to explain why I really don't like some music, when generally I love music and some I don't love. So I think there are different motivations for music. Sometimes we're actually engaged in sport. Who can play the fastest? Who can play the most complex? Who can play in the weirdest time signatures? And then we kind of do it, and it's like an athlete saying, check me out. Virtuosity is what I'm about. The crazy, crazy stuff. It's a sport. I'm not saying sport is bad. I'm just saying it's sport. And sometimes it's circus, in the sense that its principal purpose is to entertain. So the principal point of what's happening is that we want people to be like, oh, that was a great show. So it's like juggling while standing on your head and playing the flute with your nose, Really impossible things that have not much purposiveness. So there's a circus element, and then there's a poetic element. And you can probably guess which is the one that appeals to me most from the stuff I've played you already. This something, this aiming for something, there's something that we feel sometimes, or I do. You look like you want to ask something.
Yes.
You leave it till the end. But you can now if you want.
Well, we're going to have dinner as well.
Okay. Well, next week. So I think we can relate these different forms of music very easily to Kant, for anyone who's interested in Kant. He talks about appendant beauty and pure beauty, and I'm not going to expound that now, but essentially he thinks there are different kinds. The kind of beauty that exists without usefulness is what he means by pure beauty. And if we have something that's useful, like a car or a table or a horse or a person, that's appendant beauty. It's beauty that's contingent on usefulness. And then he talks about beauty that's not contingent on usefulness, that is simply beautiful to be beautiful. And I think we can relate that to sport, circus and poetry somewhat, perhaps. Not all music seeks beauty or transcendence, but some. Mahler wrote, the creation and genesis of a work is mystical from beginning to end, and afterwards one scarcely understands how it happened. Debussy says music must come from the shadows. John Corbett, writing in the brilliant Corinne Gabbard book, Jazz Among the Discourses, says the all-consuming desire on the part of the performer for the unknown, the uncharted, the area beyond territory. So this kind of reaching, I think, is key. Thankfully, someone else has mentioned Hermann Hesse this conference. So he says music reaches an underworld of instinct, that it has a sacred sense of beyond, of timelessness, of a world which has eternal value. And that our only guide to that world is our homesickness. Lovely writing, I think. So I think music allows us to go deep, to escape from the apparatus of our frothy, functional, constructed everyday selves. So for me as a kid in an ugly industrial place with parents who are fighting and, a family with broken relationships, music allowed me to escape from that into something that was really phenomenal, like a lifeline, a deeper place. Emmylou Harris, the country singer, in one of her songs, just calls it water from a deeper well. So on to Schopenhauer, the philosopher. We have two things from him today, and this is the first. He argues that our personalities are constructs which we create to survive the trauma of existence. So he's saying that the thing that we show to other people is something we make to survive the everyday, to survive interaction, to survive going to work or college. This is a thing that we create. It's an artifice. His theme is taken up in performativity by lots of feminist writers, including, I've quoted here Judith Butler, the classic writer on performativity, and Peggy Phelan. So in playing and deep listening, composing, performers and listeners refer to disconnection from their everyday normality. They feel different. They sense that they're experiencing in a different way. So I think in the musical experience, we escape actually with great relief. And even though it's only temporary, that intense effort we make to portray ourselves, the perpetration of the created self. We no longer have to create ourselves in those moments because nobody is looking. Nobody is assessing us or judging us. We can just be. We don't have to worry about that. And that's a great relief. And we're thankful to music for letting that happen, I think. And we experience connection to this nameless fecund immensity, which is our context. So because we're escaping from something, that's where I got to previously. We're escaping from something. And then I started thinking, what are we escaping to? You know, where do we actually go in that experience of composing, performing, or deep listening? And Schopenhauer, thankfully, again comes to the rescue because he argues in a different place that unlike other arts, music represents will. Will being that kind of nebulous concept of what it is behind everything. It embodies it. It is will. Now that's really key. So I live in the mountains, as I said. I frequently climb to the top of them and sit there alone for very long periods of time, which is one of my favourite things in the whole world, and feel really myself, much more than this person you'll see today. So sitting on there on a dark day in the early spring, thinking about it, this Schopenhauer idea came to my mind again. So what he's saying is that arts, painting, literature, etc., have the ability to describe, mirror, critique, comment on existence. But he thinks that they reflect and copy it. Music, he says, is existence. It's not copying it. It is it. And I always thought, okay, this is some weird German guy with some mad ideas. But I thought, let's just for a second take that seriously and see where that might lead. So music embodies the generative will behind all the things that we see and experience. It's an aspect of the force, the thing, the unimaginable that sits behind, around and within and results in the universe we experience. So he's saying that music is that. It's not copying it. It is it. So if you take it seriously, and I've put a proviso at the bottom, I'm not an evangelist. You don't have to believe any of this. It doesn't worry me. I'm just sort of sharing it. If we take it seriously, what can it mean? What is this arcane, mysterious link between music and the deepest universe that he is suggesting? And maybe it can tell us why instruments are similar, which is where we started out. So, some ideas on the nature and future of the universe. Honestly, this is relevant. If you think that I'm drifting, I apologize. This really is relevant to our discussion. So just take that in for a moment. Isn't that an astonishing thing? It's called the Eagle Nebula. So this is the universe that we are all dwelling in. You know, if we go Bangkok, Earth, solar system, galaxy, universe, we will come across this boy, the Eagle Nebula. I think that's an amazing thing. Does it move you? Do you feel something in you resonate with that? Or this is just nothing? You can nod or shake. Does it move you? Yeah, there's some kind of like circular heads. Lots of circular heads. Okay, that's good. So maybe you did. I don't know if you know string theory. Does everybody know string theory in great detail, which is about physics? No. So let me talk a little bit about string theory. This is currently very popular. I interviewed some Oxford chemists and physicians from Oxford University, where my daughter is, so I have easy access to all of these people, thank God. So I interviewed them about string theory to get, and not everybody's into it, so that's a proviso, but it's very popular as an explanation of matter and energy. It does have critics. It argues that everything, atoms, electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks, neutrinos, everything that is at its most base quantum level consists of vibrating strings. Tiny, tiny, tiny strings that vibrate. So the foundation of all matter and energy, the smallest thing you can get to ever, is a vibrating string. Everything is made of them. So it might help to have an analogy with computers. You know, everything you've seen on here, every picture, every sound, everything we've looked at, all of the recording, everything is simply yes or no, 1 or 0, nothing else. And from that 1 and 0, yes and no, binary, on and off, everything that we're looking at here, listening to, is built. We all know that, right? We all know that computers are binary. So in the same way, everything in the manifest universe is constructed from tiny vibrating strings. Like, this is a real thing. This really exists in the universe. Isn't that amazing? It's made so that we can see it because it doesn't only exist like this, but phenomenal, I think. So is that. Incredible. Yeah, so everything, you, me, the sun, the stars, the galaxy, are made of tiny strings. And these strings vibrate in 10 dimensions. We can't even imagine that. And I can see some heads going like, what? Because we only have 3 dimensions. You know, height, width, depth, and time. So 4, if you like. So in string theory, strings vibrate in 9 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. Now, in our universe, all of those extra dimensions are collapsed. They're compressed, so they're not visible. But these people predicting the future of the universe make the point that at any time, those dimensions might remanifest, and the universe will be utterly unrecognizable. We can't even imagine how it will be if some more of those dimensions, which we don't know what they are, remanifest themselves. Phenomenal stuff, I think. So I was going to do the Möbius strip, and then I thought it takes too long. You all know Möbius strip, right? You take a piece of paper, you twist it, you stick it together, you cut it in half, and it's not cut in half, it's twice as long. Or you cut it into 3, and you get one twice as long with a little one round it. A Möbius strip only has one side, which is infinitely progressing around the strip. It doesn't have 2, even though it exists in our physical reality. It has only one side. So, you know, things are not always the way they appear in the everyday. Okay. That's another galaxy I thought you might like to look at. Those are actually great jets of matter blasting out from the center there. Okay, so we can't hear strings in string theory. We can't hear that vibration. It's far too tiny and our ears are so incredibly limited. We can't hear ourselves vibrating, because that's what we're made of, vibrating strings. We can't hear that. If we move up and up and up and up in the wave spectrum, we reach a point at which we do hear vibrations. They're somewhat different. They're compression waves as opposed to electromagnetic, but they're still waves. So sound is the section of the kind of vibration, if you like, that we can perceive. This is a chart of wave correspondences between electromagnetic sound brainwaves. I'm not totally convinced by this chart, so I'm going to quickly move on. This is an attractive computer representation of, actually this is partials. Yeah, so vibration is what reality is. Sound is a vibration we can hear. A lot of sound, as I've said before, goes for our functional survival honed senses. So we hear a predator or an engine, a lot of language, and actually we're just turned on to how am I going to survive this experience. But there's sound that goes beyond that, and we can see its beauty. So, are you with me so far? Brief pause, yeah? Is it all making sense? Because this is the first time I'm taking a risk with this, you know. Could be just dreadful. So let's see how it goes. Stephen Hawking posited the notion of fields of probability. So this is another physics concept. It's called vacuum fluctuation. If you have a vacuum, people think there's nothing in it. That's not true. A vacuum constantly generates new particles. Particles appear in a vacuum and then disappear. So this is called vacuum fluctuation. And Hawking theorized that there must be something that tells the particle what to be. So energy forms into matter, What tells it to be a neutrino? What tells it to be an electron? So he's thinking that these floating fields of probability exist. The Vatican actually, someone there read this and then tried to use it as a proof from physics of the existence of God. They were saying that God is the field that predates the Big Bang. And Hawking was like, you know what, maybe that actually is a little bit of a leap too far. You know, I'll leave that with you. So let me throw this at you and see what you think. Is it possible that certain sounds, given everything is vibration, and sound is the vibration we hear, is it possible that certain sounds, certain vibrations, certain reflections and manifestations of the base matter of reality have some kind of strength? So certain sounds are resonating in a way which relates to that tiny little strings of which everything is constructed. So they have a potency, a beyond language potential. Can we even say that sound itself has meaning? So the sound is meaningful in itself at the deepest level, not because it's an analog to something else, not because it relates to an emotion, or it's a signal, or a flag, or a sign. So semiotically, you know, we talk about music's in a semiotic sense, that it represents this or it represents that. How about that sound just is meaningful as sound? Beyond, deeper than, better than language, simply because it is. So for me, this starts to intriguingly offer an answer to this strange similarity in instruments across cultures globally. If there are sounds that we're seeking, because those sounds in and of themselves are powerful. So do we seek that trumpet sound and make it in so many different ways because we want that sound? Not because it represents or it historically is associated with this, but because the sound itself is meaningful. So just for JD, the matter of the sound for the conference theme. So instruments, if you like, I'm arguing, are keys because they are compromised and broken half of the time. You know, how careful are we all to look after our instruments because they're so fragile? Think of us, you know, the cliche of a Stradivarius or a Steinway or something. So easy to damage. And once that sound is gone, it's gone. And we look after it so carefully to make sure that sound can carry on playing. You know, bits of wood and wire and skin prey to woodworm and rot and weevils, but when we sound them, they open something up. I think they're maybe similar because they're what I'm choosing to call sound. So just means base, original, the start of something. So sound. To have them at our call, to take them home, to be with us, the sounds that speak our meaning, the sounds that hold our history, presage the future, demonstrate wisdom. Above all else, through physical experiential reality, they declare our mysterious and captivating connection to everything, because we are constructed of exactly the same stuff as everything else. So, famously, Leonard Bernstein sought a universal musical language. And in Yo-Yo Ma's a lovely film, which I rewatch every now and again, on the music of strangers, Silk Road Project, he's also quoting that as something that he too is looking for, a language that extends around humanity. And isn't that something of what's happening here in a really lovely way with this festival, you know, annually at PGVIM. So music, I don't think, is something we just invent, a sort of man-made dilettante diddling around. I think we all know it. We all know that music is more than that. Music grounds us in the world, the universe of which we're a part, allows us to collaborate with atoms and with worlds, to improvise with, to understand more deeply things unimaginably older, infinitely smaller and infinitely greater than ourselves. We participate in it all, anticipate worlds to come, intuit worlds that no longer exist, that are long past. The universe of 10 dimensions, all of time and space, is available to us in music. So, kind of, maybe we could end, or maybe we can do a couple of little more examples. We have 10 minutes to go. I'm open. This is because it was new, so I didn't know how fast it would go. Do you want to look at some more, or do you want to stop there and have questions? You want to look at some more? Quickly? Okay, so just some more evidencing of the same thing. Let's take it that I've finished and drawn a line. And just some fun little evidences of what I'm talking about. So this is, I'm not going to play it. I played this actually for you before.
You performed it.
Yeah. So this is a recording of that piece that I did a couple of years ago. So guitar piece, obviously. But listen to the setting, what's in the background, very quietly playing. Cinnabar-eyed king of the sky. And now I'm going to play you the backing. So let's have a game again then. So can someone? One critic who reviewed the album said that, because I listed the instruments that I used, but I didn't say what was used on which song. So he played a game of trying to guess, and he thinks that this is Balinese iron gongs. I used some Balinese iron bar gongs, which Dieter was talking about actually the other day. And the critic thought that this was Balinese iron gongs. I think we can fairly quickly dismiss that as a possibility, can't we? Anyone want to take a guess? This is one of the background sounds, the main background sound. Come on, throw anything out.
Really slowed down guitar string being played.
Really slowed down guitar string. Yeah. Ultimately slowed down. Vuvuzela? Anyone else? Come on, one more guess for what this could be. Have a listen. Just let you be open to it. Think the Renaissance. Sorry?
Cavernous space.
No, you are absolutely right. This is the sound of the planet Jupiter. So the satellite recorded Jupiter as it went by. It recorded electromagnetic waves, and then this is a sonification of Jupiter. So what you can hear is the iron core rotating. You can hear that sort of spinning, and this is why the guy thought they were iron gongs. I mean, he's not totally wrong. And also there's the sound of the storms on the surface spinning around. This is open source from NASA if anyone's interested in hearing. There are all the planets, you can hear them all, their actual sound. And this is the actual sound of Jupiter. But if I get Gloria, who has just arrived looking extremely sleepy, to come and quickly play a bowl, come on. We can approximate it without ever even knowing that we were making that sound. So if you listen to this Suzu gong, which of course is a religious instrument, and it's made from many metals, and the metals allow do you want to try that tiny one? Do you think? Is there a similarity? It's there, isn't it? I'm not going to go down there. Om Namah Shivaya. Maybe not. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks. Let's give Gloria for being half awake. Yeah, so just for fun really, but final question and then I'm really done. What do you think of these? Are these instruments? Does that look like an instrument to you? Yes or no? Potentially? Yeah, it's an Aeolian harp, of course, in San Francisco. Gorgeous, aren't they? Lovely things. But these are things that no one ever plays. They're not made to be played by a person. They're made to be played by the environment. Yeah, so this is another Aeolian harp. And yet people always call them instruments. This one I've been to. This is the Sibelius Monument in Helsinki. And it's phenomenal, you know, when the wind blows on this, the sound is just astonishing. Yeah, so there we are. No one plays them, but they're called instruments. So, you know, instruments because they're designed to result in a sound that we seek. That's a good definition for an instrument. So, thank you very much. There we are. So there's a phenomenal ensemble. I heard them rehearsing while the storm was on. That was a really great experience, sitting with the storm one side and the ensemble the other side. They're about to play in 5 minutes' time next door. My recommendation is if you have questions, ask them really quickly so you can get next door to hear Fauve play. Am I right? You're looking like I might be wrong. I think they're at 12, aren't they? Oh, we have loads of time then. Sorry, I've got the time wrong. Yeah, apologies. So yeah, any questions, comments, thoughts? Very welcome to ask them. Alex.
You know, we didn't have internet, we didn't have access to so many instruments and sounds and music of the world and all of that. And what it means is at that time we had very limited access to knowledge in general, not just music. So you brought up into mind a lot of very deep philosophical and scientific things. So you mentioned that there's this thing of string theory, which I've never heard of before. So I'm going to look it up now.
Right.
Because it resonates with what I said yesterday about just intonation.
Yeah, you know, of course, and if this would be something I would have talked about if I had time.
That's exactly the physical manifestation of what you're talking about. But what the story I want to tell to people who are not as old as us is when I was in '66, I was searching things, just like you're saying the universe is searching something based on the sound. So I was just searching something I didn't know what. Just like you were in the steel factory.
Sure.
You know, we know we're looking for something, but we don't know what we're looking for. We just know that there's a need to find something. We don't know where to start. Is it in music or in dance or painting or in reading books? So I remember a book that I got when I was trying to get mystical. Because when you're young, you want to find God in a different way than the way that your parents tell it. That's what they usually, maybe not everybody, but any for me. So I found a book, and I think it was about yoga, because in America at that time, India was able to give us these sort of extra world things. The book said there's a vibration in everything. From the very smallest vibration to the biggest vibration, it is all vibration. And if you go very deeply into something, you will still divisions of these things, which sounds like the string theory.
Yeah.
And what they said that stuck in my mind the whole time, it says, whatever you find at the very lowest level, you will find at the very highest level. So Indians had this already understanding in their cultural way.
Yeah, Nada Brahma, isn't it? It's called Nada Brahma.
Yeah.
So if anyone's interested, there's a lot of writing on Nada Brahma. You can see exactly what Alex is talking about. And just we should talk about so much, but we don't have the time, because as you say, the synthetic scale that dominates most of our music globally now, it's a human synthetic scale. Many scales are human synthetic scales, nothing wrong with that at all. But there's a power in just intonation. Because it relates to the universe directly. And just one little anecdote on that before we move on. Black Sabbath. You would not have Black Sabbath without just intonation. And they didn't even know that was the case. So what makes them powerful? What makes Led Zeppelin powerful? They're using valve amplifiers, that they just got it from the store. They didn't say, consciously we're going to do this. Valve amplifiers make harmonics by the electronics of the valves, and the harmonics they make are justly intoned, because it's not possible to have an even tempered harmonic from a machine. It's going to relate physically to the universe. So the valves make just intoned harmonics, and when you play a power chord, that's why so much heavy metal is based on a root and a fifth, because it's a perfect interval. In our kind of even tempered, it's a perfect interval. It's just and it's even tempered. So first and a fifth, some valves. You get this incredibly rooted bass, primal, blah, And for people who lived with industrial machines in Birmingham, where they're from, that was powerful. So yeah, just intonation. Absolutely, I agree with you. Are we done? Okay, then.
Vuvuzela. Thank you. Your definition of instrument as
It's
our
a working
search.
working type, you know, working. It's an in process. So.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I cannot be, I'm not totally convinced though, because if you look at instruments of the world, the sound production part is very minimal, in many cases negligible. I mean, you look at the features of the instruments, a lot of the meaningful parts of the instruments have nothing to do at all with the sound production. And many instrument manufacturers don't have that notion that we do of an ideal sound. In fact, it's an instrument.
I guess what I'd respond to that with is the Venn diagram. So I don't think music is all about what I've been talking about today. I think there are lots of other things. So maybe there are instruments made to be sport equipment for the people who want to practice music as sport. Maybe there's instruments made for circus equipment. So people who want to put on a show that's the most amazing show I've ever seen. But they're not particularly interested in the thing that I've mostly been talking about, which is music as poetry. Music which is consciously seeking not to be useful in any way other than to be beautiful. I mean, that's, you know, this is a conversation I think we can probably run, and I'd be interested to know specifics of which instruments you mean and which manufacturers, and, you know, then we can analyze what are they trying to do with that instrument. Is that instrument, I mean, we all know that, well, we don't all. I know in my area, Vin knows, and anyone else working with electric guitars, the manufacturer aims electric guitars at bad amateurs. They don't aim them at professionals because there are very few professionals, and those professionals have a couple of instruments which are amazing, and they will probably keep and use their whole career. So there's no market for great sounding guitars. There's a huge market for okay sounding guitars that look flash, because the non-professional, the amateur, is the person who's going to buy those instruments. I'm only talking electric guitars here because that's something that you know, we know about. Vin is a monogamous. He's married to his Telecaster, and he refuses to ever play any other instrument, not even another Telecaster. So he is really useless to a guitar manufacturing company. So he's not going to buy their products. He bought it. Actually, who bought it? You? Somebody when you were a kid, wasn't it?
Yeah, my uncle.
Yeah, so someone bought him one guitar, that's it. He's finished with guitars for his whole life, which is what he does all the time, but he's not going to buy them. So, you know, this idea of why instruments are the way they are. I mean, you know, for example, Nord, for those people who play keyboards, Nord is like, oh, let's have one of those red, super expensive keyboards. I mean, whether it means it's really the best, I don't know. I have a great affection for really cheap Frankenstein instruments. You know, the guitar I have with me is very, very cheap. It's handmade by an English guy in a copy of an American style. And I don't know. Yeah, so that's an attempt to start thinking about what you're saying, but thanks very much for that observation. Someone else, or shall we all have coffee and feel happy? Okay.
I'm curious what instruments have pieces that don't have anything to do with the sound. What do you mean by that? Because I'm trying to think of a lot of instruments and I don't really have, I'm not really picturing parts without functionality. It's a small room.
No, I think she was asking you, Vern.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm saying that in a lot of manufacturing process, let's take, for example, flat gongs.
Flat gongs. Like
Flat gongs that you will find in Southeast Asia, in northern Philippines and in Vietnam. And there's a lot of myth and magic that goes into the production of the flat gong that ultimately does not have anything to do with the sound quality.
Well,
Right? So to reduce instruments as mere sound producers, Oh, here's
No,
Wawa.
come on, Wawa.
Maybe we should
let's
stop
have it.
this
Yeah,
discussion now
do you
and
mind? Do you mind if we?
Go ahead, please.
Because we're almost done, and thank you so much for coming, and congratulations on the flowers and the certificate. Do you want to sit? Can you play it for us? Yeah. Do you need a chair or?
Yes, I need one chair.
Here then, take mine. Yeah, so we're doing it out of sequence, but you know, it's a great satisfaction to me that we've managed to do it at all.
Actually, immortality and harp and wisdom harp is similar, but the tuning is different. This is but the tone is only 5 tones. Also, melody is sometimes strange. Cannot catch rhythm. So easy to catch rhythm sometimes if you want to play rhythm, something like that. But that's why we use siwa. Siwa is a twin time, twin chair, similar like that, and then have to listen each other. Siwa and harp, chen tao like that, and so have to follow the melody. Sometimes difficult to play together with the Western music and the traditional, but we have to manage for that. We can play sometime with the slow melody and then rhythm, follow the rhythm for Western, but very different, totally different with the traditional. But he want me to play the kind of traditional, no traditional.
No, I wrote it, but
Western-
in a Celtic style.
Western style. He
Yeah.
want me to play it. Now I will try to play Western style. Also, I will introduce you with the traditional style too. This is the kind of Western style. Sometimes this string is no vibration, so not so nice without microphone. Now I will play. This is he did not mention for this, but I would like to introduce my traditional too. Traditional style like this.
That's so great. Thank you so much. So essentially, you missed us talking about your instrument, which we have pictures of it from 4,000 years ago in really far away from Myanmar. And, but you're able on that instrument with your tuning to play pretty much, you know, the Celtic melody that's quite complex that I sent to you from a really different harp, and well, that makes me very happy. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, it seems like that would be a great moment to take a break. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Jonathan Day. Now we have a little lunch break, and at 1